I was just walking, where I was walking, and you know what came to me? You know what came to me as I was walking? A revelation just came to me that today is going to rain. It's going to rain today. It's a revelation. God says it's going to rain. And God says throughout some of the parts of New York, it's going to rain. And then other parts, God said it's not going to rain. Yeah. And then, in some parts of the country, it's going to rain. And other parts, it's not going to rain. God said, therefore, God, because that's what God said. And God said there's going to be some accidents on the road. And there's going to be some people that can swerve past the accident, God says. And then God says some people are going to eat breakfast today, and some going to forget, God says. And then God says, dinner. Some people might eat a nice full-meal dinner, and some might not eat, God says. And then God says, today some kids are going to come home from school, and they're going to watch cartoons, God says. And some of them might not watch cartoons, God says. They might do their homework, God says. And then God says that, some women, they're on their period today, so they can't fuck, So God says that this other woman that's not on their period, they're going to be able to fuck today, God says. And God says some of the women on their period, they might just give their boyfriend or their husband some head, you know what I'm saying, God says. And then God says that, today there's some comedies that come on, and some people might be able to watch them, God says, but then God says some people might not be able to watch them, God says. And then see what God says, that today, that might be some baby making today, God says. And some dudes might just want to bust a nut, God says. And then God says that some people say they stay off work, God says, but the other people, they went to work today, God says. And then God says today that, some people get paid on Mondays, God says, but some get paid on Wednesdays, God says. And then God says that Friday is the day you might get paid on, God says. And then God says that, when I made love to my wife and I hurt that pussy, God says that pain was only temporary, God says. I hope it was temporary because we gotta fuck the next hour, God says. And then God says, let me see, what else did God says? God says, let's see. God says, yes, test every word that I say, God says. And I guarantee you, God says that the word is correct, because God says that there's going to be raining in certain areas, and other areas it's not going to rain, God says. And some people are going to want to fuck and bust a nut, God says, and some are going to want to make babies, God said. And so God said the word is correct, and God says some people are going to eat full meals, God says, and some might just eat quick dinner, God says. And then God says there's going to be a lot of accidents out here. There's also going to be no accidents, God says. So you see how you test this? That's how you test everything that God said, because God said this stuff. I didn't say this stuff. God says. The miracle said this. God says, and then God says, Stop, nigga.